So friends, welcome to Banking Frontiers. My name is Manoj Agrawal, and I welcome all of you next kind of people to this panel discussion. So our topic today is digital transformation and customer experience. So let's go ahead into our discussion. Let me first invite all our panelists to briefly introduce themselves, and then we'll go into a set of very interesting questions. Let's start with the lady in the room, Anjana.
Thank you, Manoj. Thank you for having me here. So I'm Anjana Rao. I drive business transformation and strategy at India First Live. I've been associated with them for good 6 years now, and overall 20 years experience in life and non-life insurance. Yeah.
Fantastic, Anjana. Thank you so much and welcome to the program. Saurabh, may I have your introduction?
Thank you, Manoj. Good to be here. My name is Sourabh.Chatterjee. I work for Bajaj Allianz General Insurance Company, and I do an interesting role, which is running tech and running P&L for businesses, digital businesses. So happy to be here.
Thank you, Saurabh. Welcome aboard.
Hi, everyone. This is Amit Thapliyal. I am from Manipal Cigna Health. Proud to be part of the founding members. From insurance perspective, this is my 15th year in the insurance domain.
Fantastic.
Hi, everyone. My name is Suchintan Chatterjee, and also glad to be the second Chatterjee on the panel. So I'm a partner with Deloitte. This is my 18th year in financial services. So financial services business advisory is what I look at, and I lead our digital transformation work in the financial services space. So look forward to this interesting interaction.
Yep. Thank you, Suchintan.
Hi, everyone. Very nice to meet all of you. I'm Srinidhi Shama Rao. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer for Aegon Life. And like most of you, I'm a new kid in the room as far as insurance is concerned. I just joined Aegon Life, and before that, I have been a management consultant helping organizations go through digital transformation and ethical transformations for the last 18 years. Worked with most of the Fortune 500 companies.
Great. Thank you, Srinidhi.
Hi. Good evening, everybody. This is Palash Endu Bhattacharya. I am managing the corporate business for Red Hat for India and South Asian market. And the good part is such an eminent panel. Some of them are very known to me already, and some of them I will get to know. And I think it would be a learning experience for me.
Thank you, everyone, for your introduction and for participating in this panel discussion. So our two key topics are customer experience and digital transformation. Fortunately, I think we have seen both of them come together. But in case they had come separately, let's say CX, customer experience, had come first, but without the tools of digital transformation, or digital transformation had come without that focus on customer experience, how do you think things would have been different?
Yeah, so I have a different perspective, Manoj, over here. Knowing that there will be no innovation without a need. And I have a slightly different perspective. The customer experience first came. And because to solve the customer experience is where the digital transformation or the digital experience started coming.
Okay.
So if you actually ask me, can digital transformation come earlier than the customer experience? The answer is no. There has to be an expectation, and to solve that expectation is where the digital experience started coming in.
Yeah, my opinion is not different from Amit, but just I want to expand that why it is so. In my mind, digital transformation is all about creating possibilities. And based on innovation, service innovations, product innovation, but keeping customer in the center of the universe. So when we are basically the customer is driving factor, and we are talking about the experience of customers.
Mm-hmm.
So digital transformation is the need of the hour. It is not something, a fancy thing we are trying to drive, and it is two parallel things. Customer experiences, customers' needs are driving the transformation, be it a digital or any other transformation.
Okay, thank you, Palash. And Saurabh?
Yeah, I agree with both the gentlemen. The one beyond the buzzword, right, of transformation, I would say there are two definitions. One is around customer. We treat the customer as internal and external, right? So I would believe that customer partners, which are our agency force, distribution force, bank assurance or other models, plus even employees. I think the experience is not the customer experience means all these three stakeholders.
Oh.
And the second angle is around transformation. See, beyond the buzzword, the customer experience is an outcome of many things that you need to get together and should perform in a sort of tandem together. So you may have a beautiful customer UI UX, right? If it does not perform because your core or API or any other layer is not working, I think that's where the disconnect comes. And some banks have gone through that experience in the past few years, which we all know about. So the what I'm saying is the Amit's point around customer experience, absolutely there has to be a need, but somewhere there is an iterative element in here on both of them.
Interesting. By any chance anyone has an opposing view? Let's hear that.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one more perspective, and sorry for interjecting this conversation. Is definitely there is a need, and because there is a need, there is a solve. Now, what happens is, because there is a need, there are a few organizations or few gentlemen, when once they identify the need, they don't even solve the need, but take the need to a next level, and that's where the innovation starts happening. So this is the perspective which I just wanted to add. Thanks.
Yes, that's right. Very right.
So I just wanted to take it to the other perspective to this, right? So we all know, for example, that on the one side you have a lot of data, you have technology at the right place. Now we have all these algorithms that have all come together, to make digital transformation happen for organizations, right? So it's that idea whose time has come.
Mm-hmm.
But we generally miss the other perspective, where even the customer actually is going through a digital transformation, right? So if you look at all of us, right, we grew up in a world where there was no mobile phones, right? And then over a period of time we have adopted, and then our parents are still adopting, and so on and so forth. Whereas millennials were born to that, etc. Right? So as we customer also going through a digital transformation, right? And this digital transformation, all of us getting familiar with the social media, with the smartphone, etc., has led to a few critical trends, if you will, right? That were not there 10 years ago, right? For example, today loyalty does not mean anything whatsoever. Right? How many of you have both Swiggy and Zomato app on your phone? Right? How many of you have both Uber and Ola on your phone? Right? Yes. Probably all of us. Right? So loyalty does not mean anything. And similarly, attention spans are reducing. Right, and all of us are more and more comfortable, getting information from a Google rather than from the Doordarshan channel. Right, due to which there is very less information arbitrage, if at all. If there is anything that will spread in a matter of seconds or minutes. Right, then in such a world, how do organizations that are also having this data, technology, AI, etc., how do they differentiate? Right, so they have to differentiate on things that were not there in the past. So they have already differentiated themselves on branding, then distribution, on price, etc. Now, only thing that is left for them to compete on which they could hope to differentiate is customer experience, right? So that's why customer experience has become need of the hour, because customer is also going through a digital transformation.
Very good explanation. So it's not just customer experience that has randomly come up, but it is. Let me move on to my next question is, digital transformation has resulted in several new applications being rolled out, obviously. Many of them are customer facing, many of them do a lot of data crunching. But as a business and technology leader in your organization, how do you choose between proven technologies and emerging technologies, or let me call them promising technologies, which have a promise but are not proven? And it's not just the technology, even the partners fall into two categories, proven or promising. So this matrix of proven and promising, IT companies and partners, how does it play out as you are rolling towards customer experience and digital transformation?
Let me take a stab at it. So essentially, I'll just go back and take this question, takes me back 6-7 years, 2015, 2016, when we were all looking out for, okay, fine, how do we get benefited with RPA? RPA was a buzzword then, but so while you have a technology, and the technology was very fairly new in India. And when you scan the market, you figure out the partner network. Well, all the prominent players were in India. The partner network was still being set up. So then how do you take that leap of faith with someone who claims to have the best of the technology, but doesn't have a partner to implement, and which also takes the cost of implementation to the next level, and are they willing to? So they had technology, they didn't have the use case. Now you as a business owner have a use case. So the how do you marry, the use case with the right technology? And that's where folks who were willing to come forward and take that leap of faith, that yes, this use case is something for which I'm willing to invest, or willing to do a POC, you know. So that's how I think it all began, as to, okay, find somebody who's willing to, I'm going to be with you, Anjana, with this. Let's try it out. Let's try this use case. Let's figure out where it takes up. What kind of impact does it make? And once you find somebody who's willing to walk the talk, along with you, that's where, for at least the new technologies and how. So it's not about more about promising technology. Technologies were promising. It's about the partners and how they take a position to participate in the journey is what mattered, at least.
So the journey is how you make it happen, and not
Yes,
just a static partner or a static technology.
precisely.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yes.
Fantastic.
So Manoj, the way we look at, I'll make it completely agree with Anjana on the use cases. So as I said, right, as CIO, CTO plus the head of PNL, right, for my digital businesses, we did a small model. This is 15, 16. So we went around the world, we got all bunch of Indian startups, had a plug and play outpost, China in those days, everything. So finally we realized we modeled it into 3 buckets. Again, nothing fancy, but we said, run the business, transform the business, and continuously challenge the status quo as innovate. In the run bucket, which was my BAU, my appetite as a CIO CTO, honestly, to take a risk, right? Because these are all enterprise, scale, size. We have 71 million and counting, right, in terms of number of unique customers. It was a huge bet. So there we went with proven technologies, proven partners with new technologies can challenge, and therefore they come into the transform bucket. So when we looked at our core, at that point, an insurance company taking a core policy admin on a cloud platform was still a very big deal, right? Even the regulator wasn't they were back and forth, but we did that. So what we said, run was one, proven, challenge with proven partners in the transform bucket. And then comes the innovate, so the RPA use case or our bot use case with Yellow Messenger.ai, right? Worked beautifully. Now the company, we are very happy that it has raised, Series B, Series C and all. But the scale at which we have scaled, and during COVID times, the adoption of a very simple bot, right? A bot is a bot is a bot. Everyone is a bot, right? But what we were happy about is the self-service capability, the adoption, which was 30-40%, went up to 80-90%. And it is still continuing. It came down a little, but it's still continuing, which means those capabilities were wanting to be used by the end users, right? And I meant by end users, I mean even including employees, customers, partners, but it scaled up. So for us, on the third bucket was all the challenge, the status quo, all these new technologies, insurtechs, which can work with us. But I had the ability to say that here's business coming in, my own PNL, my own business, come in and say, let me just transform this because I have the ability to take that risk because it wasn't there before. So that's how we did run, transform, and innovate as one
but
example.
Is that innovation piece now in the enterprise bucket, in the first bucket?
Yes.
The run bucket?
It does. It has. So from innovate, it went to transform. So we start something as POC. Then there are very clear stage gates within the organization. And, it's not me. It is, it's a team which decides, of course, but very clear thresholds defined. From innovate, it goes to transform when there is a scale, when we scale it across all distribution channels, different stakeholders. And finally, it comes to run. The moment it comes to run, then it is BAU for us.
Okay, fantastic. That's a pretty neat way to divide it. Simple and neat. So let's hear from Suchintan then.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with Anjana and Saurabh, right? I think some of those points don't want to repeat, but it has to be use case centric, Manoj, right? I mean, technology by itself has to be interpreted in the how relevant is it in terms of my business model and how burning is the problem, right? I think these two questions need to be looked at before you decide, okay, do I look at tying up with somebody who's coming up with a disruptive idea? And like Saurabh said, exactly, unless you're doing that, you are not challenging the status quo enough, right? So how do you bring in that champion challenger model in your entire technology partnership is something that we are seeing all our clients adopting, right? Just one additional thought here, unless you are doing that, Manoj, what you're not doing is you are not expanding the customer experience bracket, right? Now, what do I mean by that? Going back to your first point, customer experience is not something static, right? If tomorrow the customer experience is being redefined by a grocery or a Q-commerce kind of company, I would also expect the same from my insurer, right? So it's a moving goalpost to that end, and unless you are expanding your partnership play to beyond your specific industry and the specific use cases, possibly you are missing out something, right? That's the only additional perspective, but completely agree with all the points made by Anjana and Saurabh.
So as a consultant, you see most of the insurance players adopting similar models, dividing into 3 buckets, testing it out, working with proven partners.
Okay. May not be as structured as Saurabh put it, but I think the whole idea is there are some stage gates in place, right? Because not every technology is a candidate for scale up. So there are some proven criteria of how do you move from incubation mode to a scale up and then possibly a run mode, right? So I think the thinking is exactly as Saurabh articulated.
Yeah. And look, Manoj, I'll just add, see, it's a learning experience. I'm not saying that, we got it 100% right or we are not learning even now, right? But it is a journey. The goalpost keeps on shifting. As insurers, we have a lot of catching up also to do across all, both the life, GI and everywhere, right? So
what happens when some of your partners are not able to provide the scalability or security, some other aspect where you need to enter into that enterprise zone, into that production zone?
So again, as I can just start on this. See, the way I've seen is the partnership is very important. And by partnership, I use a word called ecosystem. See, it's again a very fancy word, right? But there's a concept of ecosystem. Any innovation that you do, you'll get into an ecosystem mode, wherein a partner, large or small, one, there has to be a trust, and second, there has to be a shared value. What I mean by shared value is very interesting, right? So it could be a startup, but they are trying to come in and disrupt a part of the value chain that you have defined that you have not been able to disrupt over a period of time, right? So therefore, the problem statement, the outcome, and what are the parameters in which you judge them has to be absolutely made clear from day one. And we have seen this work beautifully for us.
I agree. I cannot not disagree with what Saurabh said. Co-creation is the mantra. So while the partner skin is in the game, and we also are, it's again, as I said earlier, it's a leap of faith, right? So while if at all, for whatever reason, if the partner is failing somewhere, even if it is the area of business understanding, it is, we put in our heart and soul to make it happen. It's not just his game. It's also trying to solutionize for the industry is how we look at it. So, how we can help the partner to, make it a solution which can be made easy to adopt. And hence,
solvable problems. You're saying that the problems that do arise are solvable. There's nothing unsurmountable.
There is nothing until unless it is something which is beyond, so you do give a breather to the partner so that.
Actually, the technology part is not the end of this customer experience or whatever we are talking about. Technology is one component. If I look at, there are a few other components, the people, process, technology, and the architecture you were talking about. So these are the 4, I would say, raw materials in other industries, relevance. So people part, we have to really, very, very have to be careful, because he was talking about shared visions. So basically the leadership comes in place. What actually, you want to do, that has to be shared, and that has to be owned by the entire people, right? And there, the communication barrier, many a times when the people are going through the transformation, the communication barrier comes in. Can I say it fearlessly? So that basically the leadership will become an important part. And here, being an open source, company, Red Hat, we see what is happening in this open source arena, right? Millions of people are contributing, millions of people are having their views. But when it is coming together, making these things ready for the enterprise, then the shared visions works, right? Then it is stepping in. So another interesting thing, maybe I don't know today, may not be able to get a time to discuss insourcing versus outsourcing, new things going on, right? The way Ms. Rao or Amit can articulate what is needed and translate into technology. Being a technology partner, it would be very, very difficult. And that is why the consultant like Suchintan or Mr. Chatterjee comes in and, bridge the gap, right? So this is the second part. And then the the architecture, the technology foundation, it has to be very, very solid. And obviously, once it is done, the operation part, how are you automating part? How are you creating a much bigger network and making something which is the flow is quite right, the integration is quite right. So that's something in the back end, the automation, the integration has to work on.
So yes, Suchintan, you want to add something?
Yeah, just one point, Manoj, while we're talking about the passion, I think one learning as consultants, right, on digital transformation engagements is where does the passion come together, right? I think one thing we have learned is the passion, the secret sauce to the passion is taking the business problem and the technology and helping it to articulate in terms of the end user's day in life, right? I mean, how is the end user's day in life going to be simplified? If you're an employee, how can you go home earlier? If you're a customer, how can you get your policy issued faster? Unless you make that translation done, the passion may be limited to certain pockets in the organization. That's the limited point I wanted to make.
Amit, can you add to that? Because your also a health insurance company. What was your experience with COVID and claims and whatever else?
Yeah. So I completely agree, and I want to just double up what Saurabh just expressed. But just to put perspective, Manoj, when I purely look it from to your earlier question, I bifurcate this whole problem into two larger buckets. One is for a corporate, there is a system of transaction, and then there is a system of acquisition. In the erstwhile era, all the corporates that focused, and in fact, it's true for all the industry, was more on systems of transaction, where Saurabh also mentioned that it's a system of transaction like a policy admin system or a core banking software where it has to run. And for that kind of a transaction, it has to be a proven technology and it has to be a proven vendor, because that's your basic bread and butter. That's your survival kit. In the last 10 plus years, what we have seen purely from a technology roadmap perspective is the focus is moved out of system of transaction, because that's given, that's hygiene for your operations. The focus has now moved to system of acquisition. So from a business solve or from a technology solve perspective, once you have your system and transaction put in place, your investments has to be purely focused on system of acquisitions. So what is system of acquisition? System of acquisition is everything around your portals, everything around your digital marketing, and that's where your technology and digital teams are now coming up with a lot of innovation. Now, again, to solve in this space, is it a right strategy to go with a proven vendor, or is it a right strategy to go with an innovative vendor? Now, it depends on the organization's appetite. As Saurabh said, there are organizations which have an appetite for innovation, then doing the transformation and then moving into a business as usual. But for organizations which do not have that appetite and neither the time to do innovate, transform and move into BAU, they would typically move into a direction where it is a proven technology and a proven vendor. So this is my perspective around how do I look at this larger bucket.
Very interesting. I keep hearing this word bucket, so I think must be very important as a strategic tool. But let's hear briefly from Suchintan and then Anjana, and then move on to the next question.
Yeah, sure. Very briefly. So I think this experience that Saurabh and Amit narrated resonates with the research that we're also doing, right? So when we look at customers during COVID, how has their behavior changed? So two things have changed, right? So one is risk perception has gone up, which has led to take-up rate of insurance, especially on the health side, right? So completely resonates. The second is the openness to self-serve, right? I mean, I'll do everything myself, buy it on the app, which has gone back to fuel the whole digital agenda for the insurers also, right? So this is like a small trigger, and we've seen the example that Saurabh gave. It may be a little new to insurance, but you've seen in other parts of financial services play out, right? If I give you the example of credit cards, right? When lifetime free credit cards were issued, I mean, they were seen as a loss leader in the portfolio. But because of the high adoption and the kind of data and the behavior you could glean out of them, they proved to be a gold mine from a customer lifetime value and cross-sell. So some of these things are playing out as we've seen in other environments. That's the only point I wanted to make.
Good, very good example. Yes, yes. Anjana, you also wanted to add something.
Just wanted to chip in. I also, one more shift which I've seen is, again taking the claims example. The CX, which was earlier siloed and was owned up by one department. You could see CX being owned up by every function. So let's take claims as an example. During COVID period, I mean, it was like, how do I make my claims notification process contactless? While every other servicing process can be contactless, how do we make for life insurance, the death certificate, everything has to be. And, there is a certain mindset with which, people have operated so far. So, allowing to accept a digital death certificate or a scanned copy itself was like, you need to make changes in your policies, your processes. So everything changed, everything became pro custom. It was not just the underlying systems. First, it was the mindset. Second, it was the focus was like, okay, how can I ease it out? So the process, which was the journey, everything was thought through, and ultimately it led to changes in technology and changes in systems. So I've seen this big shift happening. CX is now being owned by multiple functions and not just owned by one particular function.
Yeah, very, very rightly pointed out.
From a technology point of view, what they are saying, if I translate it, CX is a tip of the iceberg. It is a 30% of the entire thing. The back end, where the multiple ownership is there, multiple thing has to happen there. The automation has to happen. The integration has to happen. The application development, the way customer can consume, which is more mobile friendly or the new age friendly. The data, a lot of data is getting generated in the edge, not in the core anymore. How are you going closer to that edge? So basically closer to the data. Then the customer experience will be improved, right? So from a technology point of view, if I look at CX, something we can see, the tip of the iceberg, 70% work is actually there in the foundation, which is not visible to many of us.
How are you handling 10, 15, 20-year-old systems, 10, 15, 20-year-old data, 10, 15, 20-year-old processes? Beginners, it's easy to create something new, but it is much more difficult to fix it, something that is already running and something that you can't throw away. So how have you tackled that, and what kind of success has been achieved? What kind of challenges still remain?
So basically, Palas actually highlighted a very important aspect of experience. CX is just the 30%, the tip of the iceberg that you actually see. To put some perspective, you may see a portal UI or a full-fledged portal does not take more than, say, 30 man days of development. But to power that portal, it takes years for the underlying system to become modular, underlying systems to become much more nimble and flexible to support the portal framework. Now, to get the underlying system become nimble or modular, you need to get into a very detailed or a very deep study within the organization, where you get into a complete design, discovery, rediscovery, and re-engineering of everything that you have been doing for n number of years. Now, is something like this achieved over a period of 2 months, 3 months? No, the answer is no. For the processes to be redesigned, rediscovered, and in line with what customer experience you want to drive and take it to the next level, you get into investments not only from a time perspective, but even from a staff and focus perspective, which runs into years. What I want to only highlight is, without a design, discovery, and a rediscovery of your processes and reskilling of your resources, something like a digital experience can never be achieved. You may go and buy the best of the digital tools from the market, but if your underlying legacy systems and the processes do not support the operations of a digital experience, the organization may never progress on it. So that's my submission.
Thanks, Amit.
See,
Yes, sir.
I would say not even customer experience, not even 30%. Actually, it is, if you really ask me, right, from an estimate standpoint, it's probably not more than 10%.
Okay.
90% or more of the work is below the surface, or in a typical iceberg sort of an example. And the way we have done this, so 15, 16, we put out the vision, 17, 18, we started this. We said 4 building blocks. And those building blocks are the ones that Amit is referring to, right? So when you have the process, you have the data, you have actually the real discovery and transformation, it is a massive exercise. We said our core policy admin. So we first moved around that, said whether we do have the right core policy engine. It's not just a system of record. Today, having a modular product and a modular configurable product itself in insurance, in our case and in GI insurers case, more than 210, 220 large GI insurers will have 210, 220 products. And each one of them will have so many covers. A simple travel product today in general insurance has got more than 40 covers. 40. You can imagine, and you can, the way to do that is to make it configurable, make it modular. You have to go back to the basics. And it also involves regulatory filing in many cases if you have to go on the retail platform, right? So you have to do that work. Then you have to structure your core. And that's what we did.
Any other different kind of story on below the surface transformation?
I can talk about the surface transformation, because from a process perspective, again, I mean, the point which was touched by Saurabh. So the whole focus with so much of data coming, so much of data, I mean, so much of, investment happening in data mining and, deriving insights. If we don't relook at the journey, and at the decision points, which are where I can define a moment of interaction to be delightful or frustrating. So at that point in time, or else, the focus has always been how do we personalize, because now we have so much of data. The want was to know more, know more, know more. Now, when you know more about the customer, you know how he or she what he or she prefers, how they what are their choices. Now it's time to implement that, right, in the transactions, in all your. So it's for us, it has been like re-looking at your entire processes, customer facing processes, and how do you plug in those insights so that either you personalize the experience or else you make it, you nudge the customer to take a decision. That is where we are focusing on, and that is also a challenge, because you already have a set of systems which have made your processes, maybe, I mean, strongly coupled. Now over here you're trying to infuse something which is over and above.
And Srinidhi, do you have something to add about below the surface?
We basically we went to the features. Which are the features as a company? Which are the features that we want to differentiate on, from a customer experience perspective, and which are the features that we just have to reinvent just because the world is going there and we can't not afford to, just be there, right? And the third one is things that can wait, right? So divided into these three, right? For example, we prioritize, for example, WhatsApp experience as one of the most important, right? And the website experience. So that required us to work backwards to figure out how do you do the headless, which was not there in the past, right? And then work backwards to figure out, okay, among the 90%, what are those things that have to change to make the headless happen? And then things that are, we can just be there, it's okay, but we can't not afford to be there, but we are not competing on those features, right? And there we just did, played the efficiency game, where we went with the, proven vendors, proven technologies, etc., so that we meet the bare minimum criteria. And the third set of things that could wait, right? So, but all these were driven by the customer experience features that we want to go after and compete on.
So did all these newer insurtechs and fintechs help you in the below the surface, the underwater part?
So I was trying to link, being in the technology area for the last 24 years, I was trying to link how it is going on. So your three questions, if I connect all the three, one was promising versus proven.
Okay.
Second was CX versus DX. Or CX versus underwater, right?
Yeah.
And now the third question you put in, right? Old or the traditional applications, if I may say, traditional application versus the new things.
Right.
once again, I let me give an analogy, and this people here are more capable to explain it better or elaborate it better. So that is why this new age things will comes in, where people will build that. I think Saurabh has spoken about microservice based, containerized applications connected with APIs, and that is how it will be able to connect with multiple B2B, B2C, etc. Right? So once again, it is not either or. It is not either or, I believe, right? It has to be there, and we need to know how to create that hybrid model where the old and the new will coexist, and how the best of breed will come up. So the innovation can come when the promising thing will be accepted.
Mm-hmm.
And the day-to-day life will be ensured in the much trusted hand when the traditional thing will work the way it's supposed to, expected. So in my mind, if I actually gather, I mean, this is something I am getting out of it. So it's a kind of try to reflect what I have heard from them.
That's a good analogy. Let me come to Suchintan. What is your assessment of insurance organizations' ability to transform the code, the below the water technologies and processes, and what is the success rate you're seeing? How much time and effort does it take? What kind of role does Deloitte play in kind of making the transformation happen? And what kind of transformation assistance do insurance companies come to you for?
Sure. Thanks, Manoj, for that. So I think, yes, I mean, it's undeniable there's a strong wind of transformation in the insurance industry, right? So whether you're talking about the core, whether you're talking about CX or some of the supporting applications, I mean, that transformation one can no longer deny, right? I mean, everybody is doing it. Maybe the reason is slightly different. Now, coming to your question of, I mean, what role do we play as consultants? I think Palash did allude to it earlier. I mean, we are the glue in the process, right? Let me put it very, very crudely. Starting from the vision of saying, why do we need to change, right? What is happening in the outside that's forcing us to change? What's happening in my industry to which I need to react? And more importantly, when I change, how should I make that change a little more future proof, right? What is the future out there? I think that envisioning is the first step where consultants like us come in, right? The second part of it is, okay, vision is great, but vision is only half the job, right? So what are the options out there in the market which can help you realize that vision? Maybe one solution, one technology, one platform by itself may not be able to do it. Therefore, what is that stack? What is that view that one needs to take in order to achieve that vision? So conceptualizing that is the second part. And the third part is, as implementation, as replatforming, or some of the newer innovative solutions kind of take shape, how do you keep the whole transformation true to the goals that you started with, right? It's very easy to get a little digressed, right? When you start getting into a project management mode, everything boils down to deadline and releases going live. Are you getting the promised business benefit that you started with? So that's the third bucket of roles that consultants like us play, I'd say, right? I mean,
okay. And one of my questions was, what is in general your observation about the success of underwater transformations?
Sure.
Do they stretch out in terms of time or money, or mostly they get completed as planned?
Yeah, I mean, to be politically incorrect, all projects suffer overruns, right? Whether it's cost or time. But I think my limited point as a consultant is, as we've been talking about above the line and below the line, or above the water, below the water transformation, it's not just technology, right? And I think, again, Palash did refer to it upfront, right?
Great. Thank you so much. Friends, let's try to wrap up the discussion. We're running out of time. May I request each of you to give one point that you think is going to be a very interesting feature in insurance in 2022?
No one will deny that this is a more a generic thing, data and insights. I'm not using ML or AI or any buzzword. I'm saying data and insights driving both the end customer behavior as well as the organizational behavior will be one big thing within insurance and across all our processes.
Okay, sounds good.
So, what we're seeing is that pretty much every company has the kind of data and the tools required to process this data these days. But I think what's going to differentiate the winners from others is as an organization and as a leadership, right? Are you able to ask the right questions, right? And then don't get lured by the by the buzzwords and what everybody else is doing and so on.
That's a very strong point to make and a good example. Thank you, Srinidhi.
Yeah, I'll just put a perspective. See, with the at least with this pandemic, while a country like India does now recognize the importance of insurance, I think the biggest agenda for all the insurers across as we progress in this journey is actually upgrading or educating the population in general that from a insurance protection to a health investment, this concept of protection moving into an investment, this psychology change for the end consumer is something that all the insurers have to work together and achieve it. So this concept of protection has to move into investments.
Very, very strong point. Very strong point.
So the way we are looking at it this year, the focus is primarily data-driven insights on processes to personalize. So that's how we are looking at process-led transformations to infuse data-driven insights to make an impact on the NPS. So
sounds good. Sounds good.
So I think just connecting the dots again, right? Everybody is focusing on data, everybody is focusing on transformation. But one thing as an industry outsider, right, we would want insurance industry to do possibly a little bit more is the interplayer collaboration, right, on data. I mean, the way you have seen in banking, way you have seen, partly seeing in utilities. I mean, once that kicks in, there are exponential rewards to be reaped there. Maybe that's where the industry needs to catch up a little bit.
That's a very good outsider perspective. Thank you, Suchin.
So once again, my view is an outsider view, as Suchintan is rightly putting it out. I am taking a note and love to learn from each one of you how you are talking about this data-driven. So what I understand from it, the data is getting generated all over the places, from edge to core. How we are going closer to the data? How are we making more sense to the data? And how intelligently we are using it to benefit our customer, to benefit the organization we are working for. So I believe that would be the key in this coming year. And as an industry, in this industry for some time, it would be a fascinating journey in my mind.
Thank you all for sharing that new perspective on InsureNEXT. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.